dragonflies and damselflies, which are in the order of their wings are held a certain way, their antennae length is certain, there's a certain feature, the abdomen, and it's not any one trait, it's like a combination of traits that you use to diagnose what area you have. I think I find that some students who are starting this out have a hard time because they're thinking there's just one thing that you can use to diagnose what type of insect this is. But it's usually 2 or 3 features in combination that you have to kind of put together. So think about that. Okay, so we have insect orders. Insect orders. And there's about 35 orders of insects, and we're going to cover about 15 common ones that you might run into or see typically. And this is one of my favorites. Odonata is dragonflies and damselflies. And the name Odonata, you don't need to know this for the test, but the name Odonata means ancient tooth. And I think it refers to that these are all predators. And they have also the oldest fossil record of insects includes types of dragonflies that occurred back in the Carboniferous, maybe even back into the Permian. But the Odonata are dragonflies and damselflies, and these pretty much have remained unchanged for the last 350 or so million years. They're pretty amazing flyers. Some of the key features for the dragonflies and damselflies is that they have these large membranous wings. So let me see if I can get like a little diagram here for you. And let's see here, there you go. So what we have going on here is an organism that has, here's kind of like the body segment here. So they have a long, kind of like a cigar-shaped body, a long kind of tubular body. But one of the interesting features about these is that the wings are large and membranous. Okay, so large membranous membrane-like wings. And generally when you say large wings, you're referring to wings that are as long as the body is. So their wings are about as long as the overall body is. So large versus small is kind of using the body to wing ratio as a reference. One thing to note is it's kind of hard to use it as a real diagnostic feature, but when you see them alive, these can't fold their wings. They have to hold their wings out because they have no mechanism for folding them. More derived or maybe more advanced insects have the ability to kind of pleat their wings and fold them up underneath their shell or whatever. And these don't have that. It's kind of hard to tell with the preserved insects because most of the preserved insects, the wings are spread out. But just in general, they're usually, the dragonflies are holding their wings kind of outstretched at rest. And the damselflies hold their wings kind of holding their back at rest. And so, but they're basically the same order, just 2 different major suborders. Dragonflies versus damselflies. I think I mentioned these when we were talking about reproductive isolation, about mechanical isolation. That these, here's the male, for example, and he puts a sperm packet on his thorax and then goes and catches a female, and then the female reaches around and grabs the sperm packet. But there's some mechanisms here. His little clasper can't grab onto the neck of the different species of female, and her little sperm scooper can't retrieve the sperm if it's the wrong species of male. So they have this kind of mechanical isolation so that they don't have any attempted hybridization between species. So we use them as an example before. But okay, so large membranous wings, meaning the wings are, you know, kind of as long as the body is. Another feature that's really important here is, or very easy to use, is that these have, let's see if I can get the color here. These have very short antennae. So short antennae, and again, the term short, usually you refer to the length of the head, is their antennae are actually shorter than the head is long. So when you're looking at these, you really can't see the antennae. They have antennae, it's just that they're so tiny. These little tiny little, I don't know, little wisps of hair or whatever. And there's the antennae there, like little dimples. So the antennae are there, it's just that they're super short. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is because there are other insects that look like dragonflies and damselflies, but they'll have long antennae, or they'll have a different arrangement of their wings. And I'll point out as we go, as we get to these other orders, which ones might be confusing. And so when you're developing your key, you can kind of focus in on the ones that might be little. Okay. All right. Odonata, dragonflies, damselflies. So on the exam, what I'm going to do is I'll have insects pinned. Like I'll have 4 different stations, probably these front 4, and I'll have an insect on a pin on a piece of cork with a microscope, and all you need to provide for me is the order name. That's all you need to do. So all this extra information is just for you to kind of assemble your identification. Okay. All right. So dragonflies, damselflies. Another common order that you might run into is the Orthoptera. The most insects have this epithet on their name called ptera, P-T-E-R-A, ptera or whatever. So Orthoptera is referring to the grasshoppers and the crickets and the katydids, and the name ptera means wing in Latin. And ortho, you probably know this name from like the orthodontist. That's the doctor that straightens your teeth, right? So this means straight wing is what the name literally means. And where the name straight wing comes from is in the Orthoptera, their wing, you can see here on this grasshopper, has like this straight line down the back of the wing. The wings are folded over the body like an A-frame tent, and where the wings meet is usually a very, very straight line. So the name Orthoptera comes from that. But what you could say is that we have an insect that has a wing that's kind of folded over the body like this. Here's the wing. Then let me draw the body here. Something like this. Usually, these have jumping hind legs. So I can get it on here. Okay, so that's kind of what the basic idea of a grasshopper or a cricket would be. So, for wings, wings are folded like an A-frame. And what an A-frame means is if you look at the body here in cross section, like if you look the rear end of a grasshopper, the wings are kind of folded like that over the body. And so they're for flight. Wings can be used for flight, but also they're there for protection. So the wings usually are kind of leathery. They're not totally membranous. So we say the wings are leathery, meaning that they're not like cellophane. They're kind of more like a substantial leather-like quality. So it's kind of flexible but kind of firm, and that's the general idea. The antennae are variable, but usually the antennae are long. So oftentimes the antennae can be longer than the head. Not always, but usually they have long antennae, meaning they're longer than the head is. Okay, and then not all of the groups have this, but their legs they have a jumping leg. The hind legs have this kind of large, kind of muscular, spring-like action where they can kind of fling themselves up. One exception here is Jerusalem crickets. These are sometimes called potato bugs. I had one over here that was the one that had the metamorpha exploding out of it. But these Jerusalem crickets, for one, their wings are reduced, they're vestigial. Their wings are like vestigial little pads on the back of their body, so they're burrowing crickets basically. And so the wings are reduced down, so probably so they don't get in the way of the soil. And the other thing to note is rather than having jumping legs, they have more of a digging leg. But you kind of get the idea. So on the exam, what I'd like to do probably is put insects out that represent the main features I'm mentioning. So even though like Jerusalem crickets are an orthoptera, I won't put one to the test because it's kind of like has a whole bunch of different features that you got to identify. So I'll try to be pretty straight ahead on the traits I grab for the insects there. Okay, so that's the orthoptera. Okay, and then there's a whole series of insects that actually are sort of related to Orthoptera. I guess they're called like the Orthopteroids, meaning they're grasshopper-like insects. And that'll include the mantises, the cockroaches, and the termites, and the earwigs. Are kind of like grasshoppers. But a couple people last time asked about mantises. And so there is an insect order, or a whole order called the Mantidea. And the Mantidea are pretty obvious because they have these raptorial, grabbing legs that they use to grab their prey. But for the most part, you can see they have the same kind of straight wing, A-frame folded leathery straight wing that grasshoppers have, right? So it's kind of like the wing looks like a grasshopper wing. It's just that the front half of the body is kind of specialized in grabbing rather than jumping. Okay, so here we have this Mantidea. Let me see here if I can get this. I can draw one of these here. Going on here. Okay, and then they have all right, so here's the business end of these things. Here are these raptorial legs. This, and then kind of grasshopper, kind of cage-like. Okay, so a couple things here about the Mantodia is they have these raptorial, and the name raptorial refers to like a raptor, like an eagle or a hawk are called raptors, but they could also, you could say, grabbing legs. They have kind of the same folded A-frame wing. A-frame leathery wing. And then one added thing is they typically have cerci. So at the very, very tip end of these, you can see the two little threads sticking out the back. So the abdomen with cerci. And that's what that is basically, is little antennae-like feelers off the rear end of the insect. Okay, looks good. Mantises. I think I mentioned to several people that the mantises that we have in California that you see kind of popping out in your garden are all introduced. I think they're mostly Chinese species that were brought in as beneficials. And there's this legend that the story about mantis mating systems. I think I told you about the squid mating, where the male will try to insert a sperm packet into the female's mantle cavity and then get out of there before she eats them. And that's pretty common among animals that they kind of cannibalize each other. But there's kind of a legendary story about mantises that the male mates with the female, and then before he's done, or before he can get away, she'll turn around and start eating him while he's still mating. And many biology textbooks will say this is like some sort of an adaptation for, like, not only are you mating and delivering your genetics as a sperm donation there to contribute to the offspring, but you're also sacrificing your own nutrition and protein for the benefits of the offspring. What a great evolutionary story. So that was written like in the 1800s based on someone who was looking at mantises in a terrarium. But when you look at mantises in the wild, like I said with the squid, the males basically carefully approach, mate if they can, and then get out of there before they eat. So, but yeah, it's kind of an interesting story, and I like to point out these ideas, these stories that have been propagated, as kind of evolutionary examples, sometimes aren't totally true. But mantises are pretty cool. If you find any cruising around, bring them in, and they're actually really interesting stories to check out. Okay, and then we had, of course, our cockroaches. I'm going to go ahead and put the other orthopteroids kind of like in this zone here, so they're all kind of similar. But the Blattodea, this is the cockroaches. And with the cockroaches, they have a leathery, flattened wing, so a flat leathery wing. Okay, they typically have long antennae and cerci. So they have cerci off the rear end of their abdomen. And the main feature, though, they have kind of like these long, slender legs. running legs. But probably the main feature for the cockroaches that I think is obvious is their head is kind of like pointed backwards. So, so the head points backwards. And with that, there's a name for this in entomology. It's called systematis. But the idea here is you have in a cockroach something like this. You have your body like this. Let's see if I can legs, quite long, slender running legs. Okay, and then they have here's the abdomen here. Wings are kind of over the body, like long, slender legs. So here's what we got going on. This is the body, usually with circe, legs. Okay, so here's what the head looks like. It's kind of like a mantis head, but it is the head is kind of like back like that. Essentially, it's like tucking their head underneath their first thoracic segment. And so really what you're seeing essentially from the top is just the first thoracic segment and then these antennae kind of sticking out. You can kind of see that here, where you see this first thoracic segment plate, and this is like just the top of its head. The mandibles and everything else are pointed backwards and underneath their ventral thorax. That's the idea there. So anyway, I think these features, flat leathery wing, long antennae with circe, they have long slender running legs, the head usually points backwards, kind of a key diagnostic feature for the cockroaches. That looks pretty good. Again, cockroaches probably evolved along with humans. You know, we have cockroaches that kind of live in our sphere. I think Redding's got about 4 or 5. Pretty crazy. But anyway, a very successful group, and they're kind of like basically like, they're very, very close to the mantises. It's kind of like, it's almost like I'd say a mantis is just a predatory cockroach. It's kind of the way to think about it. But not what the mantis wants to hear, but anyway, there you go. Okay, another group that is also in the same kind of vein, or the same kind of orthopteroid group, is the Dermaphora. And the Dermaphora, these are pretty recognizable as earwigs. Probably familiar with these. Dermaphora. So the Dermaphora, these are the earwigs. Their features are, they have short leathery wings. Short leathery wings. And so what I mean by short is the wings are much shorter than the abdomen. They don't even cover the abdomen. What you can see are these short little tabs on the back, and that's the wings. The name Dermaphora means skin, no wing. They have a wing, but it's just really short, kind of abrupt, and kind of fleshy. So that's the derm refers to the leathery aspect of it. Obviously, they have a lot of the same features as cockroaches. They have long antennae. They have long, slender running legs, but the identifying factor on these that really nothing else has is they have these circi that are modified into pincers. And so the circi are called forceps, or pinchers, I guess. So sometimes they're called pincher bugs, sometimes they're called earwigs. Let me see here. I think that's pretty obvious. Let me go ahead and draw one. We have our thorax, we have our head, our antennae, we have our legs, our abdomen, and the wings are really short, so they're kind of like these short leathery pads on the back. But again, the kind of diagnostic key features we have that are on the hind end. Okay, so pretty easy. I mean, you know a earwig when you see one, a dermaphora, so you kind of think of it that way. But these are the diagnostic features of the group. So interestingly enough with these is they really don't know what the pinchers are for. Like, entomologists have been studying these for hundreds of years, and it's not totally clear what the function of these pincers are. Like, if they were for catching prey, wouldn't the pinchers be on like your front end, like where your mouth is, right? When you grab stuff and stuff in your mouth. So they're not for catching prey. If they were for defense, like to defend themselves, you would think that the pinchers would be all like what you see in the males. So they have sex differentiation. The males have these kind of hook-like pinchers, and the females have these kind of more slender pinchers. So the male pinchers are a lot more pronounced. So it's not like they're for like, nipping at a centipede and swallowing them to eat them. So it's not like they're for like defense. So the best guess of what the pinchers are for is kind of like antlers in deer. Like the males have like a real elaborate antlers for fighting other males to attract the females. And the females have them because, well, their daddies have them, right? Like the giraffes, for example. So it's likely that pinchers, these have a semi-social network. They live usually like in gardens, like underneath plywood, or if you have any kind of paper or plastic in your garden, they'll be living in kind of wet, under a piece of wood type habitat, under a log. And they usually live in groups of like a couple dozen individuals.
I always find them like in my
bathroom. Like a little family where they're all siblings and such. So siblings and sisters, etc. Anyway, the little pinchers are probably used for sexual selection. The males essentially use them to compete for mating privilege, and the females basically, it's unclear what they use them for, or if at all, or it might be like the giraffes where they have them as non-sex linked. But they don't actually use them for any known function. It's possible just the males use them for sparring, for kind of dominance, a little hive. They're really kind of cool organisms, and the name earwig, of course, comes from the idea that when you're sleeping at night, they crawl into your ears and set up a nest in there. But that's not true. It has happened. All kinds of things. Not to you. Okay, and our last little group of insects that are kind of like cricket-like is the Isoptera. And these are the termites. Let me go ahead and paste this out here.
Termites.
The Isoptera, or the termites, the name Isoptera, ptera means wing, iso means same. So what this refers to is these have two pairs of wings, they have 4 wings, and all the wings are basically the same size and shape. So the key feature, I think, of the Isoptera, which is the termites, is they have very long membranous wings. very long membranous wings, what that means is very long means the wings are longer than the body. And in fact, usually the wings are like 2 or 3 times longer than the body. So here's the body here of the insect, and the wings are, almost like 3 times longer than the body is. So usually what you see here with an isopter is you see something like this. You see a organism that has kind of a petite body, but the wings are like huge. They're not really elegant flyers. They kind of have, they sort of kind of fumble around in the air. They're kind of using maybe more air currents to move them around than actually wing movement. But the wings are like over twice as long as the body is. And there are very few insects that kind of have that feature, so think about that. A couple other features are they have long antennae and they have cirrus. So they'll usually have cirrus on the rear end, and then their antennae are usually longer than the head is. And that's it. So termites live in social colonies like the earwigs do. Cockroaches kind of do also, they live in little colonies. So they all kind of have the same sort of lifestyle or habitat. I mean, that's what I think is interesting, is all of these are kind of very, very similar kinds of insects. They specialize in things. So the termites, we know, they eat wood pulp, or they're able to eat cellulose. And how they do that is they have those Giardia-like protists living inside, the Retortaminata type protists living inside of their gut to help them digest. The only ones that'll have wings are the reproductive adults, the queens and the males. They call them kings, they're not drones like the queens. But the queens and the kings, the males, when they disperse to mate, have the wings. But the rest of the colony, the workers, don't have wings. So on the exam, if I have termites, I'll have the winged ones, the ones that have wings. Otherwise, it's kind of hard to really know it's a termite if they don't have the wings present. So that one's pretty straightforward. Okay. Let's see here. In writing, I think we got about 3 species or 3 types of termites. Termites can cause major damage to houses. I don't really see that so much here in the Reading area, but like in Southern California, termites will just tear up a house. Major problems.
My cousin bought a house that was tinted for termites before we bought it.
So then
and it's
we're
right next to a
on
bunch of
to
trees.
a whole nother
So
group of
it was
insects.
immediately like he needed to sell it and move out and tint it again. Like,
So
I don't know why.
I'm going to
Everyone told
use
him not
old
to. But
school terminology on this. If you look at current classification, these are named a little differently. They're called the heteroptera. I'm going to use some older names, Hemiptera and Homoptera, to refer to these 2 different groups. So I think it's just easier to do. But classification of insects has changed over the last 10 years. And these next 2 orders that I'm going to describe are actually now lumped into 1 order. I think it's better to separate. So let's go ahead and talk about the Hemiptera and the Homoptera. So that the theme of all the insects that I'm going to list here now,
green one's
the
cute.
theme is all of these have some sort of a stabbing beak-like mouth part. Okay, their mouth parts are modified. So far, everything I've described here so far, their mouth parts are basically mandibles. Mandibular mouth parts are the basic fundamental insect-type mouth part. But many insects have modified their mouth parts into different specialized functions. In this group, it's all stabbing beak-like mouth parts. So the Hemiptera, the name Hemiptera means partial wing or hemi-wing. Hemi means like half or partial. Ptera. This is the idea that on the front wing, it's like half leathery, half membranous. So the forewing is half leathery and half membranous. And what that looks basically like is the wing kind of has this X-like appearance. When you look at the wing, it's kind of formed into this like, looks like this. Where the wing kind of has this X appearance on the back. The leathery part of the wing is kind of like the base here, like this. And then the membranous part of the wing is folded over the back like this. And then this is the thoracic plate, or the mid-thorax. But what I think it has is kind of like this X-wing appearance. And you can kind of see that on these. Here we have a kissing bug, and it has this kind of X-shaped pattern on the wing. Here is a box elder bug, or a stink bug, and it has this kind of X appearance. Here's another stink bug, like a plant bug, and it has kind of this X shape. So the X shape on the wing is really the kind of diagnostic key feature of these. And then they have like a body that has a, antennae can be variable, but again, the key feature here is X-wing. Okay, and then they have a beak mouth. So the mouth parts are really kind of beak-like. And so all these, if you look at their mouth, they actually have kind of like stabbing, spear-like feet. The beak usually doesn't point forward. It usually points down or behind. But you can see on this kissing bug, it has its beak sticking out. It's about ready to bite that person. And then these plant bugs will bite into your garden plants, etc. So that's kind of like their feature. Not all of these have wings. That's a bed bug. And you've probably heard about bed bugs being an issue or kind of being rampant, resistant to pesticides, etc. Bed bugs are in this group and essentially live in kind of the creases of mattresses, etc. But it's that stabbing beak-like mouth part that kind of gives you. Okay, Hemiptera. So these are basically what are called the true bugs. We use the term bugs a lot with insects, but the Hemiptera really are the true bugs. And there you go. Okay, then the group that's very similar to them is, let me change this name. I'm going to change this name to a different name here, though. Not the Hemiptera, it's the Homoptera. And again, what the deal here is this is an older classification, but I think it makes more sense. The Homoptera kind of like Isoptera. Homo means same, and ptera means wing. And what this refers to is, rather than the wing being half membranous and half leathery, the wing is all membranous in this one. So, wing all membranous wings. Okay? And these have a beak mouth. So their mouth parts are beak-like. They're all usually plant parasites or plant predators. Beak mouth. And the antennae can be variable. I think it's the combination of the membranous wings and the beak mouth that kind of dictate whether it's a Homoptera. So again, ignore that Hemiptera name there. It should be Homoptera. I was just trying to be current, but I think it's easier to kind of describe these. So these include like the aphids, the mealybugs, and cicadas. And the cicadas are kind of actually out now in Reading. They're kind of emerging right about now, local ones. And you probably hear the cicadas at night. They're the ones that kind of have that, they kind of have like this kind of screechy cry or call. And that screechy cry or call basically is they have these sound producing structures where they can kind of squeak their abdomen with this kind of shrill squeak. But so anyway, cicadas are a good example of what a Homoptera is, but also aphids, mealybugs, etc. So a lot of plant parasites there. So let's see here. Let me go ahead and draw one here so we can have it. I want to make sure I don't run out of room here though. But like a cicada would be a good example of this. So here is the beak. Here is the leg. And the wings are generally membranous over the body like this. And that's kind of like a typical Homoptera. If I don't write something like with circe, it means they don't have circe. So none of these groups have circe. I know the aphid there is showing like it has circe, but those aren't circe. They're something else. But I think on the exam, probably what I would do if I were to put a Homoptera on there, it would be a cicada. So kind of focus in on what the cicada plant is. I think it's a really good example of a Homoptera. The aphids and the mealybugs would be too challenging or too see on test. Okay, on to I think this is the last stabbing biting one here. And this is the Theoraptera. And the Theoraptera are the lice, body lice, head lice, crab lice, etc. Aptera means no wing, and Theor, P-T-H-I-R, is Latin for louse. And so lice have basically been hitching a ride on humans since the very beginning, probably evolved along with humans. Anyway, these have no wings. So they're vestigial wings, so no wings. They have a beak mouth. And their body tends to be flattened dorso-ventrally. So they have a dorsally flattened body. So the body is flattened dorsally, meaning they're kind of like pancakes. They're really kind of flat top to bottom and kind of wide side to side. And the reason I'm pointing that out is the main thing you might confuse lice with would be fleas. And fleas are flattened side to side and tall dorsally. But we'll talk about that when I get to fleas. But so the lice are obviously ectoparasites. They grab onto your hair. And so one interesting thing about lice is they have a, let me go and see if I can draw a louse here. Here's a louse, and their legs have, their claws on the legs are like pinchers. They're kind of like, almost like chili pins. But the legs have these, let me see if I can draw this person. these like claws that occur on the leg. And those claws are uniquely shaped to grab onto the host species. So they have these kind of like claw legs. And of course, that's where the name crab louse comes from, because crab lice have kind of like this short, abrupt crab-like body. But if you look very closely at them, they have kind of like these little pincher claws. Body lice have the same kind of thing. You can see from this image right here, they have this kind of like almost like a crab claw pincher. So what those do is the crab claw pinchers are for grabbing onto hair shafts, grabbing onto your hair, and then they bite with their stabbing beak-like mouth part and draw your blood, your food. So anyway, the difference between like a body louse and a crab louse really is that the crab lice are specialized in grabbing onto, pubic hair or armpit hair or eyebrow hair is kind of a coarser type of hair than your general body hair is, and then your head hair is a different type of hair than your body pubic hair is. And so there's like 3 different species of lice that can kind of specialize in these different habitats per se. So I've got a poem for you. So anyway, back in the late 60s, when the kind of hippie lifestyle sexual revolution type situation happened, there apparently were massive crab lice outbreaks, among communities because of sexual contact. And so anyway, Berkeley, of course, was kind of in the center of this. So what they used to say is, don't sit on a toilet seat that's, a public toilet restroom seat, because you might get lice. And we talked about that with the trichomonas as well. Don't sit on toilet seats because you might get these sexually transmitted infections. But anyway, this Berkeley poem goes something like this. It's no use to stand over the seat. Berkeley crabs can jump 3 feet. So, but anyway, so not only do crab lice, have an outbreak, when people are having local partners. I think I mentioned, at least I know I did in Bio 1, or maybe in here, that body lice are actually carry typhoid fever or typhus, and so body lice are usually found on your body, body hair or whatever. But that was during World War I. More soldiers in Europe in the trenches died of or got sick from typhoid fever or typhus than actually from war injuries. And that's one reason why now, if you go into the Army or Marines or certain branches of the military, that they shave your head, they basically they take your clothes away and give you, standard clothes, is because in World War I especially, lice outbreaks were just horrific in barracks and in war trenches, etc. So body lice, crab lice, head lice are still an issue. If you have children or you have siblings or whatever, you probably know that lice outbreaks in schools happen all the time. So it's still an interesting parasite among humans there. If I have a louse or lice on the test, it'll be on a slide. So I think I have some body lice on the slides, and it's pretty easy. Okay. All right. So this group so far, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different orders. The orders that I've shown you so far are what are called hemimetabolous insects. And what that means is the hemimetabolous insects, like the cockroaches here, what they do is from an egg, the egg hatches into a nymph. And the nymph, which is basically a non-winged immature, grows through various molting stages until it gets to the adult stage. The adult stage is where the wings pop out or hatch out. And so this type of development is called incomplete metamorphosis or hemimetabolis. And basically what it means is the juvenile insect essentially looks like the adult just without wings. So anyway, everything from here on, the Neuroptera is our first one. These are called holometabolous insects, and they go through a metamorphic stage where the juvenile stage looks totally different from the adult stage. The juvenile stage is usually called a larvae. Think of like a caterpillar is the larval stage of a butterfly. That's what a holometabolous metamorphosis is. And so, so everything I've covered so far are not metamorphic insects, but everything from here on will be. I'm not going to ask it on a test, but I think it's kind of interesting to note that there's two major different developmental pathways that occur in insects. Okay, this is the Neuroptera, and these are the lacewings and doodlebugs and things like that. So the Neuroptera. The Neuroptera refers to a nerve wing. Neuro means nerve, ptera means wing. These have very long membranous wings. So probably what you'd confuse this with would be either a dragonfly, Odonata, or an Isoptera, a termite. But again, it's different combinations of features that they have that those don't have. So they have long membranous wings. Long membranous wings, but different from the Odonata is these fold their wings. The wings are folded back. Folded over abdomen. Okay. Then also different from the Odonata is these have long antennae. So the two features I would say to use to differentiate these from dragonflies or damselflies is these have long antennae, Odonata, dragonflies, damselflies don't. The wings, when they're at rest, fold kind of over their body, like they kind of fold like an A-frame. Remember the wings folding like A-frames over the body? In dragonflies, they're usually held out or held up. And then how to differentiate them from the Isoptera is these have no circe. And this is the only one that I'm going to list with no circe, because usually if I don't specify circe, it means they don't have them. But that's how probably the three things that are super similar, the Neuroptera, the Isoptera, and the Odonata all kind of look superficially alike. And the way you tell them apart is kind of the arrangement of the wings, the length of the antenna, and whether they do or don't have circe. It's like a combination of 2 out of 3 features. And that's kind of the challenging thing I think you'll find. So anyway, let me go ahead and draw one here. So get a little Neuroptera drawing. These are like green and brown lace wings. These are super beneficials in gardens. And they eat aphids. It's kind of their specialty. So what you see basically is we have a very long membranous wings, long antennae, no circe, pretty much going to be a Neuroptera. So the green lacewings are important in your garden. They eat aphids. They're really big predators. And the larval stages also eat aphids. The cool one though is like if you go out to Igo, like Cloverdale area. Actually, on Shasta College campus, you can find these too. These are sometimes called doodlebugs, but they're also called antlions. And so they have really beautiful. This you could probably confuse that with the dragonfly or damselfly. You see the long wing, long antennae, long wings. no Circe. They make these little burrows, and in the bottom of the burrow is this little savage-looking thing with these giant mandibles. And when ants or other insects walk by, the ants or insects will fall or stumble into the little pit and get eaten by that thing. And so, pretty. Aren't we lucky that we're so big? We don't run into these things. But you ever see these little divots out in the kind of on walking paths or sandy areas? At the bottom of that little divot will be one. Okay, sound good? All right, Neuroptera, lace wings. Okay, the Coleoptera. This is the most diverse group of insects. Of all the insects, this is the most successful group. And I think it's like 20%, 1 out of 5 of all animal species are beetles. So beetles are the most successful, probably, group of animals. Coleoptera. Ptera means wing. Coleo means shield. So in these, their wings are basically hardened. It's like not leathery, it's actually a hardened wing. So it's called like a shield wing or hard wing. The wing is hardened or shield-like, and it's usually folded over the body like a shell. So you could say that essentially the wings have been modified into more of like an armor coating than they are for flight. Although many beetles can fly, they usually fold out their front wings and then use their plain wings for flying. But anyway, so the hardened wing, the other thing to note about this hardened wing is that it tends to have kind of a T shape. So the wing folds or forms into kind of like an abrupt T shape. And I'll show you why I'm saying that in a second here. So here's like a typical beetle. So the T-shaped wing is a way to differentiate these from the Hemiptera. So the Hemiptera are probably the insects that you would most likely confuse with the Coleoptera. But the main way I tell, or I just superficially look, is that the wing kind of has like this T in the middle of it, like this, a T here, versus an X, like we see in that one. That's the main differentiator. That's because these are the two front wings that are basically parallel, and this is the two front wings that are kind of overlapping like that. Difference. Other way to tell is that, like I said, if I don't specify these insects have mandibles, is the beetles have mandibles and the Hemiptera have a stabbing beak-like mouth part. But I think that T-wing versus X-wing is kind of the way to differentiate the two hard wings type of insects. Okay, so antennae are variable. They can be short or long. There's no Circe on these. Legs are variable. But I think the hardened kind of plate-like wing and the fact they have mandibles is the main identifying feature of these. Okay, sound good? We're getting there? Okay, the Lepidoptera. We're almost done here. And then we'll just take a break. I'm gonna bring out the insect boxes and kind of take a look. And that'll be it for today. The Lepidoptera includes the moths and butterflies. And the lepido means scale. So Lepidoptera means scaly wing. And so their wings basically have scales on them. Scaly wings. Okay, and so let's go ahead and do like a straw one here. scales, the wings are basically covered in these kind of like powdery scales. And the scales are useful for insulation. They kind of keep the wings, the insect warm. But also the wings, the scales can be easily modified in different colors. So one striking thing about butterflies, like this monarch, is when you look at the scales, it's like a mosaic. Each scale can be altered for color. It's almost like a mosaic artwork there. It gives them their coloration. So they have a lot of flexibility in their coloration. The other feature that these things have that is really it's a unique feature of them is they have a kind of like a soda straw or quilly mouth part. It's like a quilly straw mouth. So they have this like, usually when they're at rest or when they're preserved, you'll see it like coiled up like that. But they can actually stretch it out, and they use this for nectar feeding. Their mouth parts are kind of like a silly straw, quilly straw that they would use a tube to draw nectar out of the flower. Butterflies and moths are kind of like saying frogs versus toads. It's kind of a nebulous term, but generally speaking, butterflies are lepidoptera that fly around during the day. Moths are lepidoptera that fly around at night. So the reason why the moths are more dustily colored is because it's dark and they're not using their coloration for communication or reproductive isolation type of situation. So, but they're basically kind of the same thing. But I want to point out that the idea of butterfly versus moth is kind of like when we talked about, we'll talk about later on, but like newt versus salamander or frog versus toad. These are just common names that really aren't taxonomic names. Okay, Lepidoptera. So how you tell them? Scaly wing, and that soda straw-like mouth part is really unique. That's the only group that has that feature. Okay, Diptera. I think we only have 3 more orders to go over here. The Diptera, these are the true flies. The Diptera, the true flies, and the key feature of these, as the name implies, is they have 2 wings. They only have 1 pair of wings. And the wings are usually membranous. The hind wings are modified into these little halteres, these little kind of knob-like structures. But I think the other feature I would say on these is that the antennae are variable, but the mouth parts are variable also. But the mouth parts are never mandible. So they have either a spongy or beak mouth. Depending on the kind of fly it is, if it's like a house fly, they have a spongy mouth part, which is like a big, like almost like a dish sponge that flops down and soaks up their nutrients. Or if they're like a robber fly or a mosquito, they have a beak-like mouth. The mouth parts are variable, but the main thing to note is they're never mandibles. They don't do mandibles. They have these altered or modified mouth parts. Antennae are variable. Some have long, some have short. I think the key feature is 1 pair of antennae. Sorry, 1 pair of membranous wings is the kind of the key trait of these different. Let me go ahead and draw a fly here. So here's kind of our variable mouth part type stuff. But they have 1 pair of membranous wings. The hind wings, if you look really carefully in a microscope, are vestigial. They're like these little knobs that sit behind the main wings. They actually have two pairs of wings, but the hind wings are reduced down to almost nothing. They're used like as stabilizers, basically. Okay, Diptera. Sound good? Probably the main thing you would confuse a Diptera with would be the Hymenoptera, which is our last group we're looking at, the bees and wasps, etc. There's a lot of Diptera, a lot of flies that mimic wasps. They probably avoid being eaten by predators. Okay, so very closely related to the Diptera are the fleas. Fleas are kind of like a sister group of flies. It's just that the fleas have no wings. So the Siphonaptera these are the fleas. These are laterally flattened. The body, rather than being dorsally flattened like the lice, these have a lateral flattened body. Laterally flattened body. So they're kind of like squished side to side. They look very tall, but they're very, very narrow side to side. And they have no wings, obviously. Thank goodness they have no wings. And that's where the name Aptera comes from. The siphon refers to their sucking mouth parts. They have a beak mouth. And they tend to have a jumping legs. So in a flea, you have something like this. Here's like the head, beak like mouth part. That's kind of like what a flea looks like. I think the main thing you want to differentiate here is the fleas and the lice are probably going to be the most easily confused of the two. And so check out that dorsoventrally flattened like a pancake or side to side flattened, you know, like a leaf or whatever. But that's kind of the main differentiating feature. And if I were to have these on the test, I'm not sure. I think I have lice and fleas examples, but they'd all be on slides. So that's the general way to present them is on a slide. Okay. All right. Very last order, and then we'll take a break here, and I'll pull the boxes out and show you how to make a key. Is the order called the Hymenoptera? The Hymenoptera, these are the second most diverse group of insects after the Coleoptera, probably the Hymenoptera and the Diptera. But anyway, these are the ants, bees, wasps, hornets, all those types of organisms. And so their features are they have membranous wings, 2 pair of membranous wings, as opposed to 1 pair of membranous wings in the Diptera. So the thing you probably confuse the Hymenoptera with would be a fly, and you want to count the wing number. If it has 2 pairs of wings, Hymenoptera, 1 pair of wings, Diptera is the feature. They also have mandibles. Oops. Let me use a different color here. Mandible, mouth parts. And I know I didn't specify mandibles on most of these. If it didn't have a beak or a toe straw or whatever, it had a mandible. But I'm writing mandible because that's what differentiates it from the Diptera. The Diptera never have mandibles, the Hymenoptera do. The last feature is kind of an interesting little odd feature, is that these have a skinny waist. And let me go ahead and write this down what this means. They have like a thin waist. Essentially, the connection between the thorax and the abdomen is like this little constricted waist called a pedicle or pedicel. So one year, of course, I was new to this whole Google thing, and I typed in the term pedicle to demonstrate this on Google. And of course, I got all these lingerie photos of women in these corsets that had this little tight,
It's really funny because I was trying to see how it was
with
going,
abdomen,
but I didn't get that
corsets.
actually
Corsets have
like
really tight, real tight, and they're like super skinny. That's also called a pedicle. So always be careful when you Google in class. But anyway, so that name, that the kind of fashion trend of corsets and kind of squeezing your abdomen real tight with a corset, but that name pedicle refers to that. So if I were to draw a typical like wasp, for example, here's kind of like thorax, here's the head. So the pedicel is this kind of skinny connection in the thorax to abdomen, whereas in a fly, it's a thick connection. And probably what this is for is because many bees and wasps have the ability to use a stinger. They can use their tip of their abdomen. They're all females, and the females have a modified ovipositor for laying eggs that can be used for a sting. And it's probably this is so they have more articulation mobility. They can move that stinger around. So not all of them have stingers, but the stinger basically is a modified female egg-laying structure. Males are kind of optional. Mostly female. And 2 pairs of wings. But here is that pedicle thing. And that's really kind of a key identifying feature of Hymenoptera. Okay, so the exception here, though, is ants will not have wings. So typically ants, like the termites, the only winged examples are when you have the queens and the drones emerging from the hive to reproduce and disperse. They'll have wings. Typically when you see ants, they're wingless. So the key feature here is on an ant, their pedicle has a knob on it. And probably what you'd confuse an ant with would be like a termite. Termites might be the main thing you'd confuse ants with. But on an ant, their pedicle has this, so here's like an ant. Something like this. Their pedicle has like a knob on it. And so the ant pedicle has kind of this like little bump on it, a knob. And so I would say that probably in your insect key that you make, Hymenoptera might come out in more than one spot. Because one of the first things that you would do to make a key, and we'll take a break and I'll show you how to make a key. I'll pull the insect boxes out. One of the first things you do when you make a key is you try to make a major break off for the different types of organisms. And I think wings are probably the easiest way to make a first cut in insect identification. So with wings or without wings. Without wings, we have the fleas, we have the lice, we have other ones that superficially don't have wings. And then of course you have ants that don't have wings. So ants might come out in the no wings category, but Hymenoptera also comes out in the wings category. So in an identification key, you might have a type of organism that comes out in more than one spot. Kind of the idea. Okay, so I think what we'll do, that's our last order. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 different orders of insects. That's less than half of all the orders. These are the common ones that you see. I have all these insect boxes back there full of our insect collection. And so on the exam, what I'll do is I'll have these front 4 stations will have a microscope added with an insect mounted in a piece of cord. And you'll have to do about 2 minutes basically to run through your key and try to identify what order that insect is. Some of them might be really easy, like you know what it is, you just basically look at your key so you can write the order correctly. But I will probably pick 2 that are more challenging, like that are, you know, they look like something that they're not. But if you were to use your key, it'd be pretty clear what they are, okay? So I think what we'll do is let's take like a longish break. You know, we'll meet again like a quarter till, like we get 15 minutes here. And in that time, I'm gonna go ahead and spread these boxes around the room so you can see them. And then what I want to do is go over how to make a dichotomous key. How do you put together an identification key in one page, front and back page, you can use for the test. That'll be it for today. So 15 minutes, we'll do look at the insect boxes. So you should be able to get out of here by 10:30, certainly. Okay. All right, and then be sure you take a picture of the board here.
The crazy picture.
What's that? You did? Sweet. Okay. Here's a really cool praying mantis here back here. Oh wow. Great. Fresh. Great. So check this out. They're pretty cool. One really cool thing about praying mantises is when you look at them in their face, they look like they have little black pupils that are staring at you. Yeah. And that's cool. What you're doing is you're looking down. They have really complex eyes. You're looking down the individual tubes of their eyes, but it's really spooky because it looks like they're kind of like looking at you, you know. So really cool. Check it out. She's coming out now too, and they might fly. So if she flies off, grab her.
Say hi, guys.